Welcome back once again to your number one source for information, education, and inspiration on the most underrated career opportunity in business today. That is a career in the insurance and financial services industry. And this is the You Should Get a License podcast. I'm your host, Rod Powell. And today we have a conversation with someone who embodies why you're going to get the education, inspiration, and information, and why the career path is underrated. Because what she's done is she's been able to take a baseline, a foundation, start in one space, expand it into other businesses, leverage her license in other areas as a trainer, educator, as a community advocate, and now as a consultant helping other entrepreneurs in her industry as well. I want to bring her to the table, the founder of My Own Lane Consulting, Miss Ladda Love Hawkins. How you doing, Ladda?
I'm well, thank you, Ryan. Look, I'm like, who are you talking about? That was an impressive introduction. Wow, is that me?
Hey, no, I'm excited to have this conversation. I mean, look, this is a conversation that we actually have attempted to have a few times, but you've really been busy, just in everything that you got going on. I know that first, I love to talk about for this platform, kind of the niche and the industry focus that you've been on in your business. But the first thing I have to talk about, two things. First, that your name is Ladda Love Hawkins.
It's legal. Look, I joke and say it's not my stripper name, it's my legal name. It's on my birth certificate.
It's not the club name, right?
It's not the club name.
Ladda Love. That is amazing. And that you are the sister of Precious Walters Norman, which is also amazing. And I did not know until 5 minutes ago.
Right.
Right.
No, people say we sound alike too. So sometimes it's just like get us in the same room. Yeah.
You know what? Speaking to you, I definitely can see that. And you have similar, you know what? You also have like just similar energy, like really positive and upbeat. And for those who don't know Precious, she works with NAIA, National African American Insurance Association, and and now with E.G. Bowman as well, and Jelani Fenton, just doing some phenomenal things, in this industry. But tonight we're focused on Miss Ladda Love Hawkins. So I want to hear about your story. So this platform, what we talk about is we talk about the different career paths, the different places that you can go. Obviously, there's a lot of them in this space. Even when you decide to get into life and health, or you decide to get into property and casualty, you still have to determine, where you're going to focus your time and energy. Is it individual? Is it commercial? Is it businesses? You've built a business in the trucking industry. And the trucking industry is one that I don't even know if I know it's incredibly lucrative, but I don't even know if people really think about it as much when they immediately think to insurance. So I would love to just hear more about, your niche and kind of where you focus as an insurance advisor first, and then we're going to talk about, the other things that you've expanded that into as well.
Sure. So really, if you ask a trucker, they're going to say that's their pain or their bane of existence is the insurance, because it's the differentiator in becoming an official trucking business, as we call it, the authority. You have to have certain limits, which are higher than average commercial. So for the most part, $1 million limit on a policy. And just hearing that number is very, intimidating. So to make sure that your trucking community, your blue collar workers really understand that all that's not used, you're not having $1 million trucks. You're having that, casualty part, just breaking it down, and even the level of compliance. There's a government organization that's kind of over trucking and the insurance part specifically, called the FMCSA, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. And they're like my best friend, because they kind of tattletale on our truck drivers of if their insurance is current. So, we have like a government entity, like doing a little tap on the shoulder, like, yeah, you just missed your due date. That means you're on the countdown for 10 days before the lapse. And unless you want to start from scratch, you need to kind of get this up to par. So
you can't cheat.
Can't cheat.
You can't cheat. It's crazy because, man, wow. Because I've seen some of those premiums that truckers pay.
That too. Those are nice.
you can't get around. I mean, I guess nice for the agents on our side, but for
Right.
them, it's whoa. I mean, you cannot get around that. Um, how'd you how'd you find that as the niche, as the area that you wanted to kind of focus on?
Be honest, it kind of found me. I'm very sensitive to relationships and just, opportunities. I've been kind of a serial entrepreneur, all my adult life. And when I heard about the premium, so that was kind of the enticement of, oh, so what do you have to do? How do you get aligned? And there was a lady I was working with that was her niche, and she loved it. But when she kind of was breaking it down, what I loved about it was more so than not, you're working with the actual owner operator,
Mm,
the person who is the decision maker, no gatekeepers, and like I said, a little bit um, possibly naive about the business side of things.
yeah.
And so having the opportunity to teach, lead, inspire, and just know that these are hardworking people out here doing this thankless job. I mean, let's be honest, when we sit down at the dinner table, we're saying our prayers, but we should also be saying thank you to the American truckers because it helps get the food from the warehouses, from the farms to our stores and ultimately to our homes. But I fell in love with the culture of trucking,
Hmm.
where people were just out there trying to, get their hustle on and they were actually making real income. One of my first clients, when he told me he was making 8,000 a week, I was like, he is
Right.
like like people don't do that, but he
Yeah.
did that and had the receipts for it.
You
So
said, what are you, an insurance agent? What are you?
right. I was just like, people don't do that in the real world. You
Yeah.
can't make that type of money. And absolutely. And with a high school education, possibly less, because some states you don't have to have, your high school education to get a CDL.
And you know what? You're right. Thinking about the sacrifices that go into that, because a lot of those individuals, they're on the roads for sometimes weeks at a time,
Hmm.
away from their homes. Like you said, while we're at home having dinner, they might be cross country. They might be driving 8,000 miles a week for that 8,000 a week.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it really is a big deal. I hear a lot today about truck, or I've heard a lot about trucking. I mean, if you look on social media, and if you go on YouTube and people talk about trucking businesses, and hey, you could get started in the trucking business, you actually help people get started in that business. So not only are you taking your insurance expertise to make sure that they're protected and that they're managing their risks properly, you're also saying, hey, if you want to get into this space, I can help you with that as well. Can you tell me a little bit about, what you do on that side too?
Sure. So early on, and like I said, from being a serial entrepreneur, I learned that the true marketing best kept secret was leverage. My reach can only be so far, but then I'm to link with someone else who has that reach, and then we just kind of go from there. And so I really leaned into social media. It was actually the big game changer because unlike buying leads, from a lead source, all of mine were organically generated through
Mm,
social media. And so supporting and leveraging all the different ways you could get into trucking because it's a people oriented business. It is heavy into relationships. I had a client that she was originally a life coach. And as we were talking, she was just like, I'm trying to see about this trucking thing. I've heard so much about, the loneliness a lot of truckers experience, like you said, being away from home, mental anguish. Unfortunately, there's even a term called suicide by trucking. Some people choose it
mm,
as a way to do it. And yeah, I know, kind of
yeah.
graphic, but can you imagine you're the driver and had just the unfortunate, misstep to where someone decides to do that and you were the one that they were, kind of doing. So she kind of explains just all the things that she learned about driver care. And I was like, well, then there you go. That's a business. You're taking care of the driver because regardless of what anyone says about trucking, positive and negative, the driver makes the rate. You can't even get an insurance quote without a driver. And so it makes sense to start your risk management from the driver. And then, as you were just saying, to kind of bloom and blossom from there.
Yeah. Wow. You know what? I am just so thankful that, let me just say this. I'm just so thankful that you're approaching that consulting with the risk management background, because a lot of times when we look at going into business, we look at, the revenue that can be generated. And this is not just trucking. I think it can be any business, but we look at going into business. A lot of times in our community, we're looking at the revenue that can be generated. We're not thinking about the risk management. We're not thinking about insurance. We're not thinking about none of that. We're just like, hey, all right, we're gonna start this business, we're gonna make this money, and then we're gonna do our other thing. So I love that. I'm gonna come back to that in a moment. But what I want to do is just kind of detour for a quick sec. And I want to go all the way back. I want to go all the way back to, 9, 10-year-old, lot of love. So, and you grew up in Hawaii, right?
I did. You did your
So
homework, yes.
why you would ever leave is beyond me.
What's so funny about that is in Hawaii, everybody wants to leave. We
Wow.
call it rock fever. They're like, I'm so tired of this island. And yeah, to say it now out loud is just like, oh.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, when you're kind of confined and you're not able to go visit, you can't travel and explore because on the island we're from, Oahu, uh 3 hours round trip. So I mean, not very big. People
Wow.
came and go. We, were there because our father was in the Air Force, so military. All five branches of the military are represented in Oahu, and so you just constantly saw people coming and going, and you just kind of would envy that. You wanted to do it
Wow.
too.
Yeah. So you say, hey, you get to the mainland, you got a lot more square footage,
Absolutely, yeah,
to deal
hands down.
with. I get it. I get it. So 9, 10 years old, growing up, in Hawaii, what were you dreaming about being? What were you thinking about being when you grew up?
As I watched your podcast, I knew that was the question, and that's kind of a joke in my family because everyone kind of even says, "Do you even know what you want to be now?"
Yeah.
And my answer to that is it's always been a teacher, but as
Mm,
far as the subject, that's what's changed.
yeah.
And so, being the oldest of the three girls, there's three of us, there's another one. And so, she's in insurance too. And the oldest of three girls, and then by kind of, 5 year margin to where it was me and then it was them. I was always, mama number two type situation, and they were just as cute as they are right now. And so they were like my living dolls. And so I like to play puppeteer and have all that going on. So I always jokingly said, and my other sister's probably gonna be mad at this for me for this comment, but it's truth. Precious was my prodigy,
Okay.
and my youngest sister Faith taught me patience. And so
Mm.
both of those go into the education process.
That's kind. That's still kind.
That's still kind, right? Thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
No. Wow. Okay. So you had a lot of responsibility, kind of coming up. So I guess you were kind of groomed for, where you are now, you know.
Kind of. And
Yeah.
in that same breath, I was the rebel. Yeah. I was
At the
the
same time.
wild
Okay.
child. Yeah.
Somebody has to be, right?
All right.
Somebody has to be, right? Because you didn't say, you were naming those P's, and I thought you were going to say somebody was the problem, but you didn't say that. So maybe were you the problem? Were you the one
I
causing the
had my
trouble?
challenges. I had my challenges.
I
Yes.
got you. So take me through, kind of, your journey. Let's maybe starting with school and how you ended up eventually in education, because you started that kind of looking out for your sisters. You knew you wanted to teach in some capacity. You actually do have a background in education.
Mhm.
You train now and you consult, all those things in education really when it's all said and done. Kind of take me through your journey and how'd you actually get to, secondary education?
Really, the journey started with me because in third grade, I was in speech class.
Mm,
I didn't know, and this is even my passion with special education, neurodivergent students. I didn't know I was different. I even thought I was extraordinary because look, that's how my confidence was, right? That I had a teacher came and got me, no one else in the class. It was me at her time. I looked forward to my speech therapy,
yes.
and I was in speech therapy because my mom's native language is Thai.
Mm,
And, I'm the firstborn and I started blending things. I just said, let's just call this. And they're like, oh, she's special. You know, she's a little special. And so I enjoyed that. And I really kind of held on to it, but my academic past was less to be desired. I got bored easy.
hmm.
Um,
As
I'm
most
a
entrepreneurs do.
Yeah, and it was really difficult because it made it felt like it was my fault that I had to try to I needed to do things better. I excelled. I'm a great test taker, which actually was very helpful in this whole situation and getting my license because I just studied for a week and
Oh, wow.
got my license and I kept going back, all my different
Impressive.
licenses, risk management, claims adjuster. I like it. I like learning. But as I would tell the kids from my classroom, as they kind of struggled with confidence in reading, because I did, like I said, special education, I told them, did you know it took me 10 years to graduate, but at least I did. And they're just like, oh, so you're real slow. And it's like, yeah, you could say that. I was slow to learn that it takes discipline. I was slow to learn that just because it came easy didn't necessarily mean, you know, I valued it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my life lesson. And even moving forward and having patience with people, intellect is definitely not measured by one standardized test. I believe
That's right.
that full-heartedly. So when even people tell me, oh, I want to get my insurance license, but I didn't do so well the first time, this, that. For my life and health, I passed that test with one question, but I passed the
That's
first
right.
time. And that's all that matters. No one else knows that. No one looks at my chart. I do because I was
Yeah.
looking like,
But
but
no
I
one's
was
gonna ask you how
thankful.
many questions did you pass the test by?
Now my PNC, I did really well. But for some reason, my life and health, I just, it didn't stick, or I don't even know really, but I just remember looking at that test and just kind of seeing the score at first, and my heart was pounding because you see the score at the end, and then
Yes.
thinking, oh man. And then I'll start packing up. And then I looked at it again and it said, I passed. Go, get my stuff. And I'm like, I passed. Okay.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
that's all that matters at the end of the day. And so, we have to have that grace in the learning process. But it just really reminds me you have to be passionate. There has to be relevancy in what you're learning.
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely. It's interesting with the licensing exams, how worked up like it, before you get licensed, sometimes you get really worked up about the exams and the information. And I don't know if I should say it or not, but it's like a lot of the information that you end up seeing on the exam, you don't see again because the carriers will have their own information that you have to learn. So it's like you got worked up over all of this information. You got through the test. Obviously, compliance and legal, you want to make sure that you're always paying attention to those things as you're moving forward. But you're like, but then you go to the carriers and like, oh, a lot of this stuff I don't even see after that. So
right. You're actually telling me halfway the opposite. So it's kind of like,
right, right.
wait, what happened here?
What
Yeah.
happened here? Right? No,
Hmm.
it's an interesting business. I heard like Quincy Branch, a branch benefits consultant. I remember I heard him say, first you get your license, then you get your education.
That's good.
And I always thought that was a really powerful quote. And I think even somebody might have shared it with him, but hearing from him the first time I said it, and I was like, that's absolutely right. That's
Hmm.
absolutely right. So, you know, how'd you end up? I mean, how'd you end up in high school? How'd you end up in high school education?
Almost flunking out.
Okay.
I almost flunk it out. Look, I had and still do a little bit a problem with authority.
Okay.
I didn't want to go to classes when I wanted to go to classes. Most of my friends were older. And
Gotcha.
so as they, got into their junior, senior year, they had half year and working and all this other stuff. I was like, oh, that's cool. I'll do that too. But I was supposed to be in class. So I got in
Right.
trouble constantly with the truancy side. But again, the talent, I was able to show up when I did and take a test and pass it. And it was
Mm.
just like, yeah. Eh. And then they're just like, that still doesn't excuse you have to be here a certain number of days. And it's just like, but why? But why? But I did get exposed because I was such a at-risk student. My senior year, they put me in a peer counseling program,
Mm.
which I do give credit towards me leaning towards service and learning about, myself and everything. Some of the issues I guess I was dealing with and stuff in my life. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. I was a peer counselor. We had talking circles. We were told to kind of pay attention to our fellow students, and that's really what got me through my senior year, through graduation. It made me again have that relevancy in why I should be here because I was looking at it almost like it was a punishment. It's like, look, all my friends are graduated. Why do I have to be here?
Wow.
And
Did that, was it that experience that made you say, because this is pre, you weren't thinking about insurance at this particular time, right?
right. Hmm.
So was it that experience that made you say, hey, I want to do this. I want to come and bring this back to other children professionally? Is that what kind of pointed you in that direction? Because you were a high school teacher as well,
Hmm.
right? So,
Hmm.
your experience in high school where you say, hey, this is my opportunity to give back. Like, is that kind of how you went, what led you in that direction?
Oh, for sure. Like I said, many people don't know as a special education teacher, you take
Mm,
extra classes. So general education, they give you the book, and then special education, they tell you to tear up the book and kind of design one of your own. So it's not where we're watering down content, but we have
mm,
to individualize the content, which, they always say how you can tell you truly learned something is that you can teach it now.
yeah,
And so that was really one of the things that inspired me. But just having that one-on-one, more of a look, and didn't really realize that's what that was as I was going through it in my teaching career. But I like development,
yeah,
personal development, working with you on a one-on-one basis, having the guidelines, giving you, instruction, giving you the tools, and now watching you just develop it and turn it into whatever it turns into for you,
yeah.
because it could just be so different.
Yeah, it seems like like it, I feel like life gives us opportunities to look in the mirror, you know what I mean, and kind of see our reflections. When you were teaching high school, did you ever like look and see yourself, like see were there
Oh,
students that reminded you of you in high school and
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's when, like I said, the patience came out. And
yeah,
where you're not my mama, thank God. And they're just
yeah,
like, hey, what you mean by that? And it's just, but when I taught brick and mortar, I taught in a Title I school, and Title I schools are social economic challenged schools. And I love the experience.
yeah,
The only reason, and I lived in the neighborhood. So, I mean, it wasn't where, I was better. I was there, and my kid was there, literally.
yeah.
And so it gave me a new perspective because even getting into teaching, one of the things that really catapulted to that piece of it for me was watching my son's experience and him at a young age when he was third, fourth grade, saying that he hated school. And I was
Mm,
like, don't hate it now. Don't, I mean, because wow, you still got a lot to go.
yeah,
Like, why would you hate school? And he kind of, just he didn't like it. And so I took it upon myself, but always did, from him being a baby and just teaching him at home, But then I was like, hey, this can actually be a profession. And so went ahead and did my alt certification to get it. But lots of instances where I saw with special education where they were teaching it one way, but it's just like as you build a relationship with their student, it's just like, hey, like how we even broke down Romeo and Juliet. I was like, hey, how many of you know this story? And so I'm just telling like the baseline story, a guy from this side of town, a girl here. And so they're like, which movie are you talking about, miss? And it's just like, I
Right.
don't know, you tell me, you tell me. And then, introducing that. I have one of my favorite, genres is poetry and then
Mm.
also the macabre. So Edgar Allan Poe and
Hmm.
getting into that, which is a heavy read. It's a heavy read if you read it in the text. But I had my students who at the time were eighth grade students who on paper couldn't read past third, fourth grade levels. And we were tackling the text because we
Wow.
were taking the time to break it down. And I was like, if you can't read that word, macabre, just say, give me a word, but we're going to be consistent in the word. And then we're going to go back and we'll revisit the word. So just
Okay.
being very hands-on.
And that's a confidence builder too.
Absolutely.
You know?
You have to have wins. You have to have
Yeah.
early wins to continue
Yeah.
on.
No, I love that. I love, Edgar Allan Poe's house is here in Richmond.
Didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah, right.
wow.
So we
Okay.
had, yeah, we actually had a field trip. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a field trip this year too. But last year, because my youngest son is now in the next grade, so it's going to be a field trip for his grade. But last year, my two of my boys went on a field trip to his house, and it's interesting because I've lived in Richmond, Virginia, a good portion of my life. Lived in other places, but a good portion and I had never been there before actually. So it was a pretty cool place, and
Hmm.
learned some cool stories about a gentleman's name who I can't remember. I did talk about it on my social media page at one point, but it was like he was almost not famous, like his poems were almost not known,
Hmm.
but as a guy that hated on him like so bad that when he died, he started talking about him so bad that people started paying attention to his writings, and that's how Edgar Allan Poe really got popular.
Wow. Wow. Didn't know that, but I could see that. I could see that.
Yeah,
I could see that. No, art definitely imitates life. And
always.
then just when you take a moment to enjoy the beauty of it, and like you
Yeah,
said, don't sit there and be frustrated, but just see the opportunities. And they start kind of forming and developing in different ways, taking, like you said, your insurance license and knowing it's not just a sales thing, it's an education thing.
that's right.
You can be, in claims and in service. Um, I mean, insurance, even another way I kind of phrased it to my truck drivers is that you're buying pots of money.
Yeah,
And they're just like, how do you buy the money? I said, unless you have $1 million set aside somewhere, how else are you going to meet the requirement set forth by the government? And they're like, I don't know. You bought a pot of money. You pay monthly for this pot of money, access to it to help you out. But
that's
very first, it helps you get started. And so, changing it to the positive because I can't tell you how many times in networking events, it's almost one of those things. Oh, give us your card. What do you do? I do insurance. I don't need it. You don't even, okay. I don't have just, you don't need it.
you know.
Oh,
They
well,
listen first of all, you don't even know what I do. Like,
right. Exactly.
sometimes I get it. Like sometimes you want to maybe there should be another term, that we could use, like you use with the books,
Mm,
that can really identify, where you go. I hear risk manager,
mhm,
often now. You know, I love that you use insurance advisor. I mean, I think that's very appropriate. Because that really is what we're offering. We're
mhm,
offering a certain expertise in it could be a certain field. Could, like I said, for you it's trucking, for somebody else it could be life, for someone else it could be, auto, it could be manufacturing, and could be employee benefits, whatever it may be. But it's like, yeah, you don't even know what it is yet.
mhm.
We haven't gotten there yet. you
It's
know
like I said the bad word, and it's like, oh, I've offered you peace of mind. I'm sorry,
Don't you think people have
I've
these? Why do you think people have these stigmas about? I mean, not only one of the reasons we do this platform is because we want to break down some of the stigmas that people have about this industry and about joining the industry, right? Like,
Mhm.
why do you think people are, I could say, intimidated by this industry, intimidated just by talking about it, on any side? Why do you think that is?
Because there's no finite answer. It's a subjective business.
Hmm.
Again, you have policy, which, more or less is rules, but it's left to interpretation, which
Yeah,
is, again, kind of which way do you go? And also cost, let's be real,
yeah.
it's not the cheapest thing out there.
No, it's not.
Um, so I think those two things alone, and this every time, someone kind of asks me what I do and do I like what I do and things like that, I'll tell them just hang out with me a little bit. We'll see. And and also just I think I do it a little different. I don't sit there and focus on the policy rules. Even the Precious is probably like, she said it out loud. I don't want to say I guide the insured, but I ask
Yeah,
questions, not like how it is on the application. I'm listening, I'm probing. Ironically, my very, very first, and look, as we talk about insurance diversification, my very first exposure to insurance was as a bail bondsman. My ex-husband
that
and
was
I
where
was,
that's where I was gonna take. I
oh,
wanted to segue the conversation. Like, how did you even get exposed to this industry?
yeah,
Yeah.
so through bail bonds, I had a friend in Shreveport, Louisiana, who took the 1 day course, believe it or not, an 8-hour course to prepare to sit for the test. And
Mm.
then you are an official bail bondsman, bounty
Wow.
hunter extraordinaire, however you want to glamorize it from there.
Maybe
But
that's
yeah,
another license we should be talking about too. Like,
because it's insurance, it's a surety. So
mm,
same boats as a surety bond. That's why I recognized and understood that so quickly. Freight brokers have to get a surety bond. You bond people out of jail with a surety bond. So
mm. Okay. So let's. I didn't mean to interrupt the story. I
no, you're
want to
good.
hear. Okay, you got it involved with the as a bail. You got involved with bail bondsman initially as a
Mhm.
bail bondsman. What term am I looking for here? You got involved as a bail bondsman, or you got involved with bail bondsmanship? Like, how should we approach
Is there a
approach this
technical word? Bail bondly?
bail bonding, right?
Bail bonding.
Because it's bonding. I guess you're
Mhm.
bonding,
You're
right? So,
bonding, yeah. You're
so I mean,
technically a bondsman.
I had
Um,
not even thought about the fact that it is a bond. And how does that work? Let's talk about that piece of it as
sure.
a how does that work exactly?
So in the surety bonds, again, the three parties, you have the person, and look, my vocabulary is a little rusty, but you have the defendant to where
Yeah.
all these actions are hinged. You have the person who is kind of like your financial responsible party. It's the person who's like saying they're going to get that defendant to jail. And then you have the company. I'm writing on behalf of a surety company. And
Okay.
so with bail bonds, we call our surety notes powers because they're literally powers of attorney.
Hmm.
See, sometimes we use words and we don't really realize where it all comes from because I used to be like, where's my powers? Where's my powers? And sitting down actually one day, waiting on a client to come out because the jails take forever. It's very slow moving. And so I'm just actually reading this fine print. And I'm just like, power of attorney. So literally, I'm becoming a power of attorney for you. And yes, you are to show the court system that I am a responsible party to make sure you're advised of your court dates.
So you're making sure that the person is going to show up to those dates,
Mhm.
and you're utilizing an surety bond to, I guess, cover the surety bond covers the bail cost.
Correct. Mhm. Per
All right.
charge.
Say again.
Per charge.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's like you'll have $1,000
Woo.
um charge. Okay, so let's say your bond for seatbelt. Look, I'm going way
What's
back
that
because
mean
this is
though?
like '03. And many people don't realize in your standard personal policy, you have a $500 bail bonds built in.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Mhm.
So the company is the one that the carrier in this instance is footing the bill. You, let's say you're playing the role, you're the Bills bondsman, but essentially you're the agent, and the client is the defendant or the individual that needs to make sure they're showing up. That is a lot to take on. What happens? You know where I'm going.
I do, and this is that part of the business why I'm no
Right.
longer in it.
Right.
What happens? So it's called forfeiture.
Okay.
Forfeiture, and when we hear these stories about the bounty hunters, it's behind a forfeiture. So in any bond situation, part of the bonds, what makes it different than insurance is you're not paying monthly premiums. You're paying a set amount for almost like a CD, for that particular deal.
Okay.
So indemnification happens. Um, the forfeiture to where the bonds gets revoked or forfeited, excuse me, because they did not make that particular date.
Yeah.
So now that means that bond is due. So the carrier, the insurance company has to pay for the bond. So a $500 bond, they have to pay $500 to the court. The court collects it, they go about their happy way, whatever. But now I get a bill as an agent. So you thought chargebacks were something.
Ooh.
Deal with bonds. Because I get a bill for $500. I get a notice of forfeiture. Bob missed his court date January 1st. And so with each forfeiture, you have a window of 6 months of when that full $500 is due. And your remedy to indemnify is to get them back, to get another court date.
Wow.
That's where bounty hunting comes
That's where the
from.
bounty hunters go. So who hires the bounty hunter? The bill
Oh,
bond?
yeah, you do. Or you go do it yourself,
Oh, you do it
but
yourself.
to be honest, even though again the Hollywood version, getting out there shooting folks, all that, we're not cops. In
Yeah.
fact, I hired a bail bondsman or a bounty hunter to do one of my forfeitures. Big guy. You thought he reminded me of Mr. T. Big guy.
Okay.
Intimidating without the brass knuckles, the guns, the voice, everything. So he went to the person's house because they, wasn't hiding too much. They were just like, yeah, I missed the court date. What is that? No, you need to come and get this court date taken care of. And so he went to talk to them. He was a very intimidating man, to which the conversation carried on for a little while, and they were scared, and he left, but not without them having some video footage. And this was kind of way back in the day too. So, they had recordings of how long he stayed in the house in a threatening manner. I'm going somewhere with it because that's called kidnapping. My bondsman got arrested on a charge of kidnapping that was a $50,000 bond. So the
So then you
bondsman,
his bail bondsman.
right, and that's exactly what happened, because he was just like, I did this for you. And I'm like, oh geez. But that's still money. I still have to put forth money to the court, all these other fees and stuff involved with it. So it was a really tricky
What's
situation,
the
but
upside? So what's the upside here? Listen, I know this is supposed to
risk
be,
management.
but this is really fascinating, right?
Risk management. So that's the upside. So then you start just doing parking bonds.
Got you. Okay, okay. So on
It's
the other
like,
side, it's like we're saying
yeah, the
take
murder one charges.
probably not the
That's
way you
someone
want to go.
else.
Parking bond, that sounds safe.
Yeah,
That sounds
parking
safe.
bond. Yeah, this is your fifth fifth
So if they
time
show up
not
to
making
court,
it to court.
do you get 500 if they show up to court? Is that how it works?
The bond gets completed, so nobody's on the line anymore for the money. Once they're fined, because it's like, you show up to court, you're guilty or not, or however, the case, because that's the big misconception. People think it's based on the disposition of the case. It has nothing to do with that. My sole job is just to make sure you make your
You
court
show up.
appearances.
How's the bail bondman paid? Like where's the revenue?
Percentage. Uh-huh.
Oh, a percentage of the bail
So
itself?
you have a contract with your different surety companies, the more volume and, all the way contracts work. So on average is 10% of the bond.
So when they issue the bond, boom, they'll give you a portion of
You
that.
collect it off the top and
You
then you
collect
send
on
them the
top
difference.
and cross your fingers they show up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't cash that check just yet.
Hence the foray into trucking insurance. How'd you get?
Right. And it almost feels like the same thing. Don't cash that check just yet because, trucking insurance, annual policies,
Yes.
new companies, and even just the environment as it's been 2022, 2023. We're watching in the news, we feel it in the grocery stores once again. We're watching the gas pumps, and that's a direct correlation to, operational costs for
Yeah.
truckers.
Yeah.
It's just very
Record
tough.
year for claims too.
I could imagine. Yeah.
You know, I don't know about trucking in general, but just property casualty, just insurance
Yeah.
claims
Mhm.
so high. 2022 to 2023, just a massive increase, and it's been brutal. It's been the market's been brutal. So, how'd you find yourself going from bail bonds to trucking? Like, what was it? Just a conversation? I know you had mentioned, hey, there was someone you knew. Was it one of your clients? Was it somebody you had to bail out? Like what?
Yeah, there was a time period between that. I went full time into teaching.
Okay.
That's where I share kind of where Precious and I's roads diverged because we both, so look, admittedly, me.
Oh, ironic. Both of you work in the insurance industry.
And she stayed in it, and that was the whole thing. I was prospected through Primerica,
Okay.
and they offered a less expensive pre-licensing exam. We were in Louisiana, so you had to do the pre-licensing and stuff.
Yeah.
Then, going to Kaplan, all those other places. And so, of course, hey, what you doing on the next 2 weekends? And she was just like, I don't know. What do you want to do? Come with me.
Right.
And so we got our license at the same time, literally. I fell out of love. I got bored with it. I was like, what you supposed to do with this license? We ain't got no family. Like we ain't got no one to sell. And
All
she
that
was just
Hawaii.
like, well, it's a job opportunity. You can do this, you could do that. I said, whatever, good luck. I'm still in school. And so she went to work for State Farm, and she'll tell, in her story and her history, stayed there, became very successful, used the program to get her other accolades and achievements and such. Meanwhile, I did everything else. Like I said, the different entrepreneurial businesses, finished my degree, got into teaching. And so the time gap between the bail bonds business and trucking was the span of 10 years. Yeah.
Gotcha.
10 years.
Wow. Wow. So you kind of took a dip in, but very different because that was on the life side. I guess would bail bondsman, would that be on the casualty
No, it's
side?
his own license.
This is all. I mean, it's its own thing. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So yeah, because I mean, obviously, you can't just go do it with a property casualty license. I mean, you can do
Correct.
bonds, but
Mhm. A different type of
I'm just
bond.
thinking kind of in the family of, even though it's a
Mm,
separate license,
yeah, I
maybe.
think so. It's so weird because, like you said, there's aspects that kind of mirror both sides.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can kind of, yeah, it's
So
its
kind
own
of
thing.
listen. I mean, you're definitely very well diversified, in the space and kind of market exposure. So you got the Bells bondman. Hey, I'm gonna take a break, step away, teach, get my life license. I'm gonna get my life license, and then I'm gonna completely go in a whole different direction to commercial trucking insurance. How does this happen?
Like you said earlier, what do I want to be when I grow up? It happens definitely through, grace. It
Yeah,
happens because it was an industry totally had no context of. Um, and was just kind of able through asking a lot of questions, ask for help, ask for, hey, will you take a chance with me in getting some insurance? I'm pushing some buttons. Tell me what this looks like. I mean, I feel kind of sorry for my first clients because I did not know. And
Yep.
so it's just like, hey, so you're a trucker. So you have a tractor? Really? So you're on the farm? And they're just like, no, a tractor is what you call the truck.
Right.
Oh, for real? And they're just like, Lord, like help us. But I
Right.
was pushing buttons. And so having a good attitude in anything that you do will carry you a long way.
Yeah. I think it's pretty amazing that you just kind of jumped into it. Like you didn't go and work for a broker that was doing truckers insurance first, you know.
Kind of did.
Okay. So, okay.
So
I
kind
thought you
of
just
the
like, hey, I'm just gonna start this trucking thing. Like,
Well, not on our own. So the agency was, Precious and I, she saw that basically I was building the book for the agency that I had found and signed up with and everything because he was a new startup. And, he hired his producers and then all the producers
so
left
there
and
was
there
some
I
support
was.
there. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, more or
there's
less. We know that's
financial, I'll
loosely
say it like
created
that.
sometimes. It is.
Right, because it was going from a salary to 100% commission.
Wow.
And like you said, I think that's that entrepreneurial, maybe
Yeah.
rebel, just throw me out there, let's see how it goes. And
Yeah. All you gotta do is sell one of those $20,000 a year premium and
yeah, you sell a couple of them. Sell a couple of
a few of
them.
those a month, you'd be all right.
Yeah, I mean, but kind of what I learned too, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Yeah.
And so you take that, those chargebacks. If you didn't like, $100 chargeback, you're really not going to care for $1,000 one. So you had to
Gotta give me
create the
back.
great engine of volume.
Yeah.
And that's even how you get your better contracts in trucking. You show them your book of business. You hey,
Yeah.
I can do this. I've done it before. But yeah, the confidence.
How did you go about building your business like early on? Like how did you go about approaching and saying, hey, give me a shot? I know you say, hey, I'm just asking questions. Was there like a method to the madness? I know eventually you started to do more social media stuff, but initially was there like a method to it or what'd you do?
Absolutely. So first thing was as I kind of learned, and we're just gonna use progressive because that's everybody in trucking's like kind of
Yeah.
our crutch. And so
They'll
it's
cover
very
it.
forgiving. Yeah.
Right.
It's very forgiving. And so you learn and then you learn, your underwriting and kind of the appetite and you start kind of seeing what that looks like and referrals. So the agency that I did work with, his support, to his credit, was he had a budget of $5,000 a month per producer for leads, strictly
Mm,
internet leads.
mm.
And so he had them coming in, but I'll just say I'm just not a big fan of purchase leads. Um, I think most of us could attest to you're calling them. Why are you calling me? You called me. I mean, just
Right.
your name is right here. So I learned real quickly that they weren't the ones for persistency. There was no relationship. They were shopping and they didn't want to know anything but how low can you go? And I kind of knew I didn't want to play that game early on. And so as I did start securing business, we had a great experience and then they went and told others. And this is like I said, right, going into the pandemic when everybody's trying to figure it out. And they were just like, look, this lady, she will explain it to you.
Yeah.
And so I kind of got the reputation for just explaining it. I started building my communities online where I was just talking about, did someone ever say this to you? Or when you said this, what was the reaction? And just kind of playing off that because we know, listening with our discerning ears, when someone's like, yeah, give me that good full coverage, cover everything. You're like, oh, you don't know.
Yeah.
There is no just cover everything. What is everything? And then you start sounding like an underwriter. But yeah. But that's kind of how that developed. And like you said, learning from my drivers, learning from the dispatchers, learning how the ecosystem of the supply chain works.
Yeah.
Who needs what? What are they looking at? What are some of the, sensitivities and flexibilities that you have in how you operate that could save you money?
Mm.
So
At what point did you say, um, you know what? I know enough about this industry. I can actually teach people how to get into it. How'd that come about?
It came from asking. Like you said, it was I knew enough to be dangerous. And
Hmm.
then like I said, I would totally believe in leverage. I love communities. And so I started a YouTube and I start asking people, can you please come on and talk to me? Can you tell me about this side? Can you teach us all? And it kind of just caught on to where there's a podcast called Truck and Hustle. And a lot of those people who were on that podcast, because this kind of happens almost at the same time frame, um, they would have done a little, oh, I don't know this girl. She's on Facebook. I'm going to talk to her. And then next thing you know, they're on this nicely done podcast. But I still got to say I interviewed the same people. So my content now looks like who did it first, but
Right.
it's still that same person, that same sought after person that, people are like, a great first interview. We're still really great friends. Her name is Shaquana Teasley. She talks about international trade. And uh, the quick story is I was following her on Instagram early in the morning, just how that works, right? And I was just like, click, I want to ask a question. And so I asked her some random question. And she got in my DM and she said, what's your phone number? And I'm like, well, that was weird and fast. And I was like, who is this? Who's asking me for my phone number? And so I said, why? And she said, because this is hard to type. And I'm like, well, that's not a very professional way of saying that. So I'm like
Right.
figuring this must really be the person like responding. So I
Yeah.
gave her my number and like for real, she just called me.
Wow.
And so I'm like looking like, yeah, she sounds the same. Is this really the person? So we talked, she answered my question. And I was like, that was cool and stuff. So I reached out to her again and I said, hey, that was great information. You mind coming on and doing this little interview with me? And she did. And she tells the story the same way. She's like, Ladda was just weird. She got in my DM. She asked me do an interview, and she said, I was wondering who you were. And I
Yeah.
said, yeah, I was just a curious person. But
Wow.
yeah,
I think that's a very powerful nugget that you just shared. Like just reaching out, right? Just making contact, just saying hi,
mhm.
just chatting. Um it, it, it- listen, that's happened with a lot of relationships, that I've been able to cultivate. It's like you just reach out to people. One of my good friends, who's an actuary, oddly enough, because you don't really think that they have friends or they talk to people at all, but they do.
Right?
But but it's like I cold called him like just as a broker, and we ended up like getting together, having drinks, and it's like now we talk often and just share ideas, and it's just, I mean, you just never know like where a communication or a contact is going to go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And listen, if there's a lot of takeaways in this conversation, but I hope that individuals who listen really hear you when you say that, like really heard that, like, hey, you just reached out in the DMs, hey, how you doing? Got a question or something random, and you started to just make that connection, and you also added some value too. You said, hey, look, can I bring in this platform? Because obviously that's a place to share message and share messages and have communication, and you know you even get to learn more. I know I learned, listen, I don't know about trucking insurance. I learning about it as I'm talking to you, and individuals who I've met, and it's just, you got to just reach out. You got to just talk to people. Just
Exactly.
amazing, just wonderful,
Just
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 wonderful.
open up your mind because like you said, none of us kind of knew,
Yeah,
the common story I hear time and time again about how you first got into insurance. Some of us had maybe a little more guidance and everything, but the rest of us is kind of like there was this job, there was this person. Um, Even if that person might have been a solicitor that was just kind of, hey, you need to do this, and it may have not. I don't want to bash anybody because not that it was I like their approach
yeah,
because they take the people who might not have never had that opportunity, not have been talked to. Someone working at a restaurant who would think
yeah,
that they're the next insurance professional. This
right.
person did, and they gave them
Absolutely,
a chance, and that's all
absolutely.
we all need. And so
Absolutely.
I love that. And
Yeah.
that's my story too. Like I said, if the guy didn't look at me and said, she kind of weird, and she talked to me and she showed up to class, who shows up to class? I did. But, showed up to class and was curious and
Yeah.
had a good time. I mean, yeah, I had a good time.
Listen, I think if nothing else, it's like you get to learn and you get to see if it's for you or not, but you walk away more knowledgeable and you can make more educated decisions about things that you do for your future, about your future and what you do for your family, you know? So it,
Absolutely.
it
I want to
definitely,
encourage too your viewers in saying, like I said, I got my license. I worked for it. It's your license. You passed the test. You study for it. As you were saying, the license is not the whole thing. Your education begins once you actually utilize it, but don't let it go. Don't
that's
let it go. I've held on to it. I've done my CE. Me and CE, we have a long history. But I'm thankful for it because there's been many a time where I'm just like, I'm not doing anything with that. I
listen,
got better things to do. But then it's like 24 hours later. Really? 24 hours? You're going to let that get in the way of the years now?
yeah,
And it hasn't, I haven't regretted that decision because even in this pivot and just including, um, more life and health into my repertoire, um, if I would have got rid of it, I wouldn't have been able to.
listen, and now you're 20 years in.
Right? I mean, I still I have to look at that. Like I said, my son who's 22, that's definitely one of my huge motivators of I need to get my life together because I'm just out there,
Yeah,
sales positions, just kind of hustling if you would. Wasn't having a career, just job after job.
yeah.
And I naturally did well in sales positions because I like to talk. And it was just, this was a good fit. But now you get to genuinely use and I kind of noticed becoming an educator, I get a little more academic sometimes with the policy. And like you said, I think that's that consultation, that risk management piece. But there's a time and place for it. It adds value because I'm educating now my customer. So when you purchase it, it's not just because this lady done sold this to me, but it's I actually know how this works. And even I got my claims adjuster's license just so I know how it works when it goes wrong.
Hmm.
I wanted to be educated in that way. So even though
Yeah.
I haven't really worked the claims desk, Precious keeps trying to put me there. But I'm just like, no, but I'll drop a gem if I may, real quickly too. The CLM, the THECLM, Claims Litigation Management. Are you familiar with that organization?
Mm-mm. No.
So any claims adjuster, just having your license will give you a free fellowship. So, as the name implies, claims litigation.
Uh-huh.
So, you get to network, do CE, all those other kind of level courses with attorneys. With attorneys, the attorneys themselves pay about 1,200 to 1,400 a year for what you got for free for having your adjuster's license.
If you get your adjustment, listen, see, this is just on stacks of content. This is
You're gonna
some
have to cut this one up.
gems. Dropping bombs here. You know what I mean? So shoot, get the claims adjuster license now. That's the next one. You know what? We're gonna start talking to claims adjusters too. We gotta start talking to claims adjusters, bail bondsmen.
Yeah,
You know,
see, all those other folks. Title insurance, that's the whole thing.
title insurance, definitely title insurance. I mean, we have a state CE board here in Virginia, and the Virginia Title Association is certainly a part of the CE board here. So title insurance very involved, very involved. Let me ask you this question: after
Mhm.
everything that you've done in your career, being in the space, life, property casualty, trucking, bail bondsman, now consulting, helping other entrepreneurs, not only educating at a secondary education school level, but also educating insurance agents, helping them to get established in trucking, advocacy work, helping the drivers in the trucking industry now. What's the dream now? What's next? What's the big picture for Ladda Love Hawkins?
Give back. That's been my thing. I turned 50 this year.
Oh wow.
And so it's a very reflective time. I think, I don't know, because I freaked out when I was 30. I was just like, I'm 30. Look, I pressured, and I'll be the adult and say this. I pressured my boyfriend at the time. If we're not married, leave me alone. And he said, okay. So all behind 30.
Yeah,
And so 50 is making me say, what is my impact? What is my legacy?
yeah,
How do I give back what God has blessed me with abundance, with curiosity? Because that's what, when everybody always asks, why do you share information freely on YouTube, on social media, when other people charge this for these things in a course and stuff? I said, because I have a direct investment on making sure that the rest of the supply chain is educated. If I hold back my knowledge, so you have to pay for it, whatever else, then only those that paid for it will have that knowledge to a certain level. But it's like, if we spread it and we foster it, it grows and more people can now contribute to it. We have a safer industry because of the knowledge imparted in it. So yeah, giving back. I want to do more um giving back to, and I don't really quite have a definition of exactly what that looks like for me. Off the top, I would say, development of agents, of new agents. The life health side is allowing me to kind of have some of those opportunities to, build in that way. PNC is just so liability heavy that it's really hard to bring in people in that same capacity.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, the give back.
No, I love that. I love that. Like I had a conversation recently where this do you know Ben Rathbun, Rathbun Insurance?
I don't think so.
He's has an agency in man, it's slipping my mind where he's in Michigan.
Okay.
And he said that he was working with a consultant that told him instead of writing down his goals, he should write his obituary.
Oh, wow.
Because if he write his obituary, he'll write out what his legacy was.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I thought that was like a really, I mean, it sounds morbid, but it's actually a really profound exercise to do.
Mhm.
Like, what do you leave behind? And I mean, Ladda, you're doing a lot right now. I think what you're building is quite impressive. So,
Thank you.
I just want to encourage you and just, celebrate you and just say, hey, thankful to have you to discuss it on the platform and the things that you're sharing with the folks who are listening to this platform and this I'll say broadcast. We're not broadcasting, this recording and podcast. What would you tell someone who is maybe entering the industry right now, the insurance industry, maybe even trucking industry, but entering the industry, maybe even thinking about, getting their license and maybe it's something that's been on their mind, but they haven't kind of taken that step. What kind of advice would you give to them?
Do it.
Do it.
Where else can you? The ROI is like phenomenal, first of all. I don't, someone else shared with me, and look, I'm horrible with numbers. I'm good with reading, horrible with numbers. But just, where else can you get this kind for your time investment? Your amount of study. You don't have to have met, outside of, maybe your state says the pre-licensing 32 hours. Louisiana, I think that might be the most intensive, 32 hours. Texas, ironically, says just go for it. And so, you don't have to do a pre-licensing class. You'd probably want to, but you don't have to. But just for real, Texas, we just and it shows. Let me not say that, but go for it, because now you have that state approved license that you can add on to, you can discover. And even if you got into the life side and you're just like, that's not for me, hold on to it.
That's right.
Um, do your CE. And that is one thing I do like about Texas CE. We don't have to choose PNC, life and health, wherever else. CE is CE. So
Wow.
if I want to just do, which the last renewal, I think I really just focused on a lot of liabilities. and stuff, learning more about D&O even. Um, and it counted towards CE. So
That's
it just
impressive.
allowed me to continue to develop.
Maybe I should move to Texas. I
You
don't
guys
know.
have to still do yours in the buckets.
Yeah, yeah. So we have life and health CE, and then we got PNC CE. But if you're a member of enough trade associations, you can pick it up a little, pick it up
Right?
along the way.
It's the same with teaching. If you attend the meetings, you will have
Right,
it. But if you don't, you're gonna be like on your birthday month. Oh gosh.
right. This 12/31's coming up. Let me hurry up. Or December or October or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Um, how do folks get in contact with you if they want to reach out, they want to learn more about truckers insurance, they want to learn more about being an agent, maybe they want to get to the life and health space, or they just want to get into the trucking business. How do folks reach Ladda Love Hawkins?
Sure. So the website, My Own Lane Consultants with an S, .com. Um, email info at My Own Lane Consultants. It's pretty cut on social media, to be honest. Facebook more so. My Instagram is not that great, but so and I'm on LinkedIn pretty consistently too. I actually manage a couple of my partners groups and everything. I just like the engagement piece. So if you're in one of our groups, you're gonna talk to me because I will DM you.
There you
I
go.
think that's the lesson of the day. I will DM. I'll jump in
There you
your
go.
DMs.
And the podcast.
Um,
Which
the
one would the one
podcast.
that you recommended? If you want
So my podcast is through YouTube, I guess. So
yeah.
on YouTube, it's the YouTube channel My Own Lane Consultants. We actually have a workers' comp judge joining us tomorrow evening to talk about Texas workers' comp. She was a administrative law judge with Texas Mutual.
Wow. It's interesting. Okay, so I will tell you that by the time that this
Oh yeah, they
interview
probably won't see
airs,
that. Sorry.
so it won't be tomorrow, but it will be recorded on her channel.
Right.
So you can go and
Thank
check it
you.
out. Hey, Ladda, thank you so much, once again for taking this time. I truly appreciate it. I've so enjoyed this conversation and enjoyed you. And you're building up a lot of good karma out there. You're doing a lot of great things in this industry and profession, representing very strong. You come from good stock, obviously. And for those who are listening, you know, Ladda's found her own lane. Maybe you'll work to find your own lane, and in that lane, you heard something that made you think to yourself, you should get a license. Until the next time, peace.